This instructional video will teach you the basic knowledge about the Dragon Saw and how to remove and install the Dragon Saw blade, as well as educating you on the basic saw maintenance, key components, and the do's and don'ts of the Dragon Saw. Please feel free to follow along with the Dragon Saw parts list and operator manual that's provided in the box. This manual contains safety precautions, general safety, technical information, and how to remove and install the blade. Inside the box is the blade guard assembly along with your toolkit. The components in the box include the water valve, the upper blade guard, the lower blade splash flap, a 9/16" wrench, a 5/32" Allen wrench, and a 1/4" Allen wrench. These are all the tools you'll need to assemble, disassemble, and service the Dragon Saw. Now, the first thing you need to do is to install the water valve. To do this, just thread it on the hose and then tighten. Next, you need to take off the guide roller cover. Use the 9/16" wrench to loosen the 2 bolts on each side of the saw and pull off the cover. Notice the orientation of the Dragon as if the saw was upright. This indicates that the cover is on correctly. This cover also houses the upper and lower guide rollers, which are used to keep the blade in place. When the saw is new, you'll notice that there's a picture that showcases the orientation of the water injection plate. Flip the picture over, and you'll see that the bolt for the plate is tapered on the back. You must use this bolt to install the plate correctly. The water injection plate is provided when you purchase the Dragon Saw blade. To remove the upper drive roller, you'll need both the 1/4" and 5/32" Allen wrenches. Use the 5/32 to lock it in place and the 1/4" to turn counterclockwise and loosen the bolt. Once the bolt is loosened, unscrew the bolt with your fingers and take it out. Located on the other side of the saw is the tension spring for the transmission. Pull it out and rotate the T-handle 90 degrees to release the tension. After that's finished, bring the transmission into the neutral position and remove the upper drive roller. Notice the difference between the upper and lower drive rollers. The upper drive roller has no groove, while the lower drive roller has a groove. Now, it's critical that you always make sure the drivers are in the correct positions before continuing installation of the blade. Points you want to look at when taking the saw off a job site is to make sure the 2 breathers are clean of any debris and they're damage-free. Always examine the breathers before and after use of the saw. Another point you want to pay close attention to is the lower drive wheel. You want to make sure that when new, the lip is 0.2 thousandths. If it's worn to half of that and the sides are tapered, you're going to need to replace the wheel. To install the water injection plate, you need to locate the installation spot next to the drive wheels. When you purchase your blade, the plate comes with the blade. Use the instructional picture to see a visual on the correct way to place the plate. When installing the plate, make sure that the orientation of the waterways is at the bottom of the saw. Do not install the plate in any other direction. Now, this is very important and must be done correctly so that the blade is properly lubricated. Once you do that, turn the saw up, insert the bolt that was sent with the saw, and then use the 5/32" Allen wrench to tighten down the bolt. The next step is to install the upper drive roller. Make sure the T-spring is up and the transmission is in the neutral position. Also, make sure the slots are upright. This will allow for an easier assembly of the drive wheel. Look at the blade and notice the groove in the blade and the lip on the lower drive wheel. Insert the blade and make sure the lip on the lower drive wheel is in the groove. Now, once the blade is fitted in the groove, take the upper drive wheel and push the wheel on. After the upper drive wheel is on, thread the bolt on clockwise and use both Allen wrenches to tighten it into place. Once that's finished, release the tension and bring the transmission in so that it engages the blade on both sides. What you want to do before reassembling the saw is to inspect the guide rollers inside the guide roller cover for any wear or damage. Make sure the guide rollers are free of any cuts, nicks, or gouges. You want to make sure the guide rollers can roll freely before remounting the cover. To install the guide roller cover, first notice the orientation of the dragon. The top part of the dragon goes by the top part of the saw. Feed it into the slot and push it on. Make sure that the blade fits into the grooves of the upper and lower drive wheels and it's on tight. The next step is to install the upper blade guard and lower splash flap. Notice there are two hole orientations. The rear hole is for a 16-inch blade and the front hole is for a 20-inch blade. Now this is a 20-inch blade we're working with here, so we'll use the front hole. Thread the bolt onto the saw and finger tighten. Do the same for the lower splash flap. Once you have all that in place, you want to tension the plate onto the blade to make sure there's no movement with the plate. Flip up the blade guard and bring the saw upright on the edge of a flat table. Gently push down and rock the saw back and forth. When you look at the bottom of the saw, the gap between the guide roller cover and the body of the saw should have a level gap and should be even. You don't want it to be on any angle or tilt. Apply pressure to the top of the saw to ensure that the guide rollers are pushing into the blade and tighten the upper blade guard and the lower splash flap. To make sure the blade is tensioned correctly, put the saw down and rock the blade back and forth. There should be no play in the blade and it should not rock back and forth. You should hear no noises clicking, and the blade should be able to roll freely with the drive rollers and guide rollers in the groove. Well, now you're ready to use the Dragon Saw. However, before you power up the saw, make sure that you supply water and that you never run the blade dry. The water is used to properly cool the blade core and the rollers. On reassembly, take a lubricant and spray it on the upper and lower guide rollers to make sure that it moves freely and smoothly.